Greetings and welcome to SpaceWeek Live, episode 130 on this Sunday, September 4th, 2022. So let's jump right into it. Last Monday, August 29th, the historic Artemis I mission was supposed to launch on a Space Launch System rocket from Kennedy Space Center. To start off, some nearby thunderstorms prompted a delay in the propellant loading. During the fast fill phase of loading liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen into the SLS rocket's core stage fuel tanks, launch controllers identified a hydrogen leak in the tail service mast umbilical's quick disconnect mating interface, where the fuel line attaches to the rocket. They finished fueling both core stage tanks despite the leak, and began loading fuel into the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, or ICPS, which is SLS's upper stage. They noticed what appeared to be a crack in the orange thermal protection system material on one of the core stage connection flanges, but that didn't end up scrubbing the launch. The critical problem was that the temperature of core stage engine number 3, an RS-25D legacy engine from the Space Shuttle era, wasn't within an acceptable range during the engine bleed operation. They troubleshot the issue but ended up running out of time in their launch window for the day. A new launch attempt was set for Saturday, September 3rd. Fast forward to yesterday and launch attempt number 2. Like the previous attempt, a hydrogen leak was detected during fuel loading operations. This time it was a bigger leak, and it prevented them from getting anywhere close to fully fueling the first stage. They had to call a scrub for the second time in 1 week. The next possible launch opportunity for Artemis I is September 20th, though it may be delayed further into October. Stay tuned for updates on that. On Wednesday, SpaceX launched a batch of Starlink satellites from Vandenberg in California. Let me get my audio in here. There we go.
Minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Starlink 3-4. Go Falcon 9. Falcon is mission downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Now, I did not stream this launch because it was 1:30 a.m. my time. Per doctor's orders, I need to do a better job of regulating my sleep cycle. This means I'll be skipping some late-night launches. You can still watch them on the launch providers' channels, though, SpaceX, ULA, etc. And here's the landing.
Stage 1 landing burn.
There you can see stage 1 has lit one engine, the center engine, to prepare for landing on our drone ship. Where you can start to see in the background here.
Stage 1 landing light deploy. Stage 1 landing is confirmed.
All right, and as you can see there, Falcon 9 has landed. This marks SpaceX's 58th first stage landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, and our 39th launch of this year.
Now, Blue Origin was supposed to launch the suborbital New Shepard rocket with a bunch of research experiments, but they scrubbed on Wednesday and again on Friday due to unfavorable weather conditions. They haven't yet announced a new launch date. Last Thursday, taikonauts Chen Dong and Liu Yang conducted the first spacewalk of the Shenzhou 14 mission outside the Wentian Laboratory Module airlock on the Chinese space station. Now, I was not able to find information on the specific operations they were conducting outside the CSS, but at least they look happy while they're doing it, waving to the camera. Then on Friday, a Long March 4C launched the Yaogan 3302 remote sensing satellite from Zhuquan in northwest China. This rocket uses hypergolic propellant, nitrogen tetroxide, with its distinctive orange color, and UDMH. And again, hypergolic propellant is not cryogenic. It's stored at near room temperature, maybe a little cooler. And the white things you see falling off the rocket are thermal insulation panels, not like foam, not ice. Also on Friday, cosmonauts Oleg Artemyev and Denis Matveyev conducted a spacewalk to catch up on tasks from the August 17th spacewalk, which had been cut short due to an abnormal battery readings on Artemyev's Orlan spacesuit. They continued work to finish installing the European robotic arm on the new Nauka science module. And that is about it for the previous week. Now, looking further back into space history, according to the best available predictions, today will mark Starman's third complete orbit around the Sun. The SpaceX Falcon Heavy test flight on February 6, 2018, famously launched Elon Musk's midnight cherry red Tesla Roadster into a solar orbit. with the Starman dummy in the driver's seat wearing a SpaceX flight suit. Each orbit takes 557 days. No one knows the current condition of the car, Starman, or the Falcon Heavy upper stage they're still attached to. They haven't been seen since a few weeks after the launch, but whatever parts remain will continue to orbit the Sun for potentially millions of years. If you haven't seen it already, check out my 4th Starmaniversary tribute video. It's in my Raw Space Spotlight playlist, as well as being linked in the chat. I used an AI image enhancement tool to upscale the Starman video to beautiful 4K resolution, gave it an inspiring soundtrack, and sprinkled informative captions throughout. Nightbot seems a little slow, so it's not yet linked in the chat, but it should be shortly. Nope. Yep, there it is. Finally. All right. Tomorrow marks 18 years since Hurricane Francis did significant damage to NASA's iconic Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, and other facilities at Kennedy Space Center on September 5th, 2004. This is what it looks like normally. Completed in 1966, the VAB stands 526 feet, or 160 meters tall, is one of the largest buildings in the world by volume, remains the tallest single-story building in the world, and is the tallest building in the U.S. outside an urban area. The VAB is where the Apollo Saturn V rockets, all of the space shuttles, and the new Space Launch System rocket were stacked prior to being rolled out to the launch pad. The VAB is also where the majority of the recovered debris from the Space Shuttle Columbia is stored. Columbia broke up on re-entry in 2003, killing all 7 astronauts. Hurricane Francis ripped off 850 14 by 6 foot aluminum panels from the side of the VAB, totaling about 40,000 square feet, or 3,700 square meters. Also damaged was a space shuttle tile manufacturing building and some of the legacy rockets on display around the Kennedy Space Center. Total damage to space and military facilities around Cape Canaveral was reported at around $100 million. Looking ahead to this week, tonight, Sunday, September 4th at 8:32 p.m. Eastern, 032 UTC on the 5th, SpaceX will launch another batch of Starlink satellites from Cape Canaveral. The Falcon 9 will also deploy Sherpa LTC-2, a space tug from the company Spaceflight. Sherpa will climb to a higher orbit, where it will deploy Boeing's Varuna technology demonstration mission, a pathfinder for a planned constellation of broadband satellites. So there's a sort of a 2-stage deployment process. First, Falcon 9 deploys Sherpa, and then Sherpa deploys Varuna. Tuesday, September 6th at 5:45 p.m. Eastern, 21:45 UTC, an Ariane 5 will launch the Eutelsat Connect VHTS communications satellite from the Guyana Space Center into a geosynchronous transfer orbit. The satellite will provide fixed broadband and in-flight connectivity services over Europe. This Friday through Sunday, September 9th through 11th, is the Altair Enterprises International Space Conference 2022 in Bursa, Turkey, featuring almost 100 lectures from space industry leaders and experts. If you're interested in attending online, you can go to altairenterprises.store. That's spelled ALTAIR. This Friday night into Saturday morning is also a full moon, so stay indoors if you have lycanthropy. This Saturday, September 10th at 6 p.m. Eastern, 2200 UTC, is the first test flight of the RS-1 rocket from ABL Space. an up-and-coming launch company that will be conducting their first launch from LP-3C at the Pacific Spaceport Complex on Kodiak Island in Alaska. This is the same location that Astra Space launched their rockets from until they started launching them from Florida. So it'll be interesting. I do not know if there will be a live stream for this one, but if there is, I will be providing it for you. And if not, then hopefully we'll have a highlight video I'll be able to show in next week's SpaceWeek. Then also on Saturday, September 10th at 7:51 p.m. Eastern, 23:51 UTC, SpaceX will launch from Kennedy Space Center. So SpaceX Falcon 9 will launch from Kennedy Space Center with yet more Starlink satellites, plus Blue Walker 3, a test satellite for AST Space Mobile's planned space-based cellular broadband network. This reminds me of the deal between SpaceX and T-Mobile to provide cellular voice and text and data through SpaceX's Starlink satellite constellation. I want to take a moment to, as always, to thank our channel supporters. Even though we don't have memberships anymore, thanks to YouTube's screwy partner program requirements, you can still show your support for the channel on other platforms such as Patreon or the merch store, which I will link in the chat. Let me get to your questions. Now, we don't have our normal script running, so I'll have to scan through the chat real quick for questions. Hopefully you tagged my name at @rawspace so that I will see the questions. Rockin' Robbins 13 says, Raw Space, I wonder how ULA does hydrogen so well and why their secrets haven't been passed on to the myriad of contractors responsible or not for the launch tower that connects and fuels SLS. So it is true that hydrogen is the first or second smallest molecule in existence, with the possible exception of helium, if you consider a single helium atom to be a monatomic molecule, but because a hydrogen molecule has two atoms. But in any case, it is a very small atom, the smallest element there is, and so it leaks out of everything, and it's very difficult to contain hydrogen. And so any hydrogen coupling, like any kind of valve or connection point that is transferring hydrogen, is going to have some measure of leaking. But as for why there is an unacceptable level of leaking that has been a recurring issue with the SLS's mobile launch tower, it's not a rocket problem, it's a launch tower problem, ground equipment. That's a bit of a question mark. So it's at this point they've had two scrubs, and I think that I don't know what kind of maintenance they can perform on the mobile service structure or the mobile launch tower without rolling it back into the VAB. I don't think they need to fix anything on the rocket, but they may be able to do some in situ fixes to the service tower itself without rolling it back. A rollback would delay the launch significantly by multiple weeks or perhaps even months. As it is, we're looking at an earliest next launch date of almost 2.5 weeks from now on the 20th, with a probability of being delayed further into October. All right, so unfortunately, I was unable to watch the latest news conference from NASA, but I'll go back and check that out. I wished I could, but I was busy preparing for this SpaceWeek episode. Starwalk says, raw space, what would it be like to swim in a pool on the moon? You don't even need a trampoline. Well, it would be very splashy. I would love to see a cannonball dive into a pool on the moon. Of course, you would need to wear a spacesuit because it is a vacuum up there. There's no atmosphere. And you would need to wear, well, yes, you would need more than just a mask. You would need a full spacesuit. Whereas on Mars, depending on the your elevation, like if you're down in the Mariana Trench, if you're down in the Valles Marineris, there may be enough atmospheric pressure that all you would need is a mask. But on the moon, you would definitely need to wear a full spacesuit. But yes, it would be a lot of fun to see what would happen if you. Except there's one problem with that theory, and that is that in a vacuum, water evaporates very quickly, like violently, and so you actually couldn't have a swimming pool on the moon unless it were enclosed in a dome or something. So in that case, if you had a dome, like a habitat with a swimming pool, which would be a very strange thing to have on the moon, but if they did have a pool, then yes, you could strip down to your swimsuit and take a dive and make a very big splash. You could probably breach like even better than a whale or leap like a dolphin out of the water because of the moon's 1/6 Earth gravity. But yeah, that would be a fun thing to see, maybe brought to life on by Hollywood or something, because it's unlikely to happen in real life. Okay, so scanning for more questions. Discussions of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Sorry for the wait. Having to scan for questions. There was a lot of banter, which is fine. It's good to have chat in the chat. That's what it's there for. Michael Torres asks, quick question, is it launching today? I think referring to SLS. No, it will not be launching today. Not until at least September 20th and possibly October. As for other launch possibilities, like other launches that we're looking forward to, or not, the Blue Origin New Shepard, again, they haven't announced a new launch date for that. Now, unlike the previous few New Shepard launches, this one will be unmanned. It will contain 30-some research experiments for various organizations rather than humans this time around. But and Starship. We're all anticipating the Starship orbital flight test. Don't currently have a date on that, but it could be coming up soon in the next few weeks. So keep an eye out. I read about some conspiracy theories that the government isn't, or them or they or whatever is intentionally delaying SpaceX's ability to launch Starship because they want SLS to be the first to be the biggest, like the new biggest, because if Starship launches into orbit first, then SLS will not be the biggest rocket to launch into orbit. Whereas if SLS goes up first, then it will be the biggest until Starship launches, and then it'll be the biggest. So I should say the most powerful rocket, because SLS Block 1 Crew is actually shorter than the Saturn V was, but it's more powerful. Slightly more powerful, whereas Starship is significantly more powerful. Starship is a biggie monster. All right. Any more questions? Elmo Jones asks, to what extent are shuttle parts being used on the SLS? So I'm aware of the core stage engines themselves. The RS-25Ds are actually legacy hardware. They are flight-proven engines that have all flown previously on shuttle missions. I was told, I think it was Rockin' Robbins that said during the scrubbed launch attempt live stream that at least one of the engines actually flew on STS-1, which was the very first shuttle mission back in the early 1980s. But I haven't independently verified that. But now the core stage itself, the big orange main core stage, is based on the space shuttle external fuel tank design and uses the same orange spray foam thermal insulation material, but it is not, it's a new vehicle. It's not something that's been reused from the shuttle. It's shuttle era technology, but it has been modernized and is new construction. Now, even the engines, even though they're old engines, they have been modernized and thoroughly tested. And so they're not this, they have more thrust and they are more efficient than they were back when they were flying on the shuttles, because they have been modernized. But now the solid rocket boosters, the two solid rocket boosters on the side of SLS, are also shuttle era technology, but they are newly constructed engines, and they are bigger than the shuttle engines. The shuttle engines had 4 segments of solid rocket fuel, and the SLS SRBs have 5 segments. So there's an additional segment of fuel, allowing for longer burn time. All right. So, Selkirk Range Sasquatch says, great to see you again. Nice work on your channel. I'm impressed with your knowledge of these things. Well, thank you for the kind words. And I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as I wish I could be. I have limited bandwidth up in my cranium. But I try to bring you the information that I can get. And I try to understand my limitations so that I don't overextend myself. But okay, so Marina Repan says, I'm a little late, but what about the SLS? They say that leak happened because those engineers overpressurized. I'm not aware of any, unless it was discussed in the latest news conference that I missed. I'm not aware that the initial, because the leak in the second launch attempt yesterday was during the slow fill operation of the hydrogen, like in the very beginning stage. They only got the hydrogen to maybe, 5 or 10% full, and they already identified the leak. Now, I don't think that there was any overpressurization at that point. I think that there's a flaw in the connection mechanism of the coupling interface itself. But again, there could have been information presented in the news conference that I have not yet heard. So if so, I apologize for my ignorance. Julian Roberts, once Starship becomes operational, why bother with SLS? It costs too much. Well, Artemis is a government program. NASA is a government agency, and their funding comes entirely from Congress. There's no bake sales or private funding or anything like that. 100% of NASA's funding comes out of the federal budget. And while it is the NASA budget for 2022 was approximately $24 billion, which sounds like a lot, to put that into perspective, that's only about 1/30th of the budget of the Department of Defense. And in fact, it is only 16% of the personal net worth of one Jeffrey Bezos, who is the founder of Amazon. And so NASA's budget is not that big, but they stretch it very, very far. They do a great number of different things. Every solar system mission, Mars rover, solar research, at the International Space Station operations, the astronaut training program, the research, whatever, on vehicles and materials and medicines. Everything that NASA does is, and as well as the Artemis program and the SLS rocket, is done within that budget. And so, yes, SLS has been very expensive, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad. Like, it's much cheaper than the Apollo program was in relative dollars, $1969. But once Starship becomes operational, it will be used as it's currently contracted to be used as the human landing system component of the Artemis missions. And so Artemis I will be an unmanned test flight where they'll orbit the moon with the Orion spacecraft for a few weeks and then come back to Earth. Artemis II, which is not going to launch for another couple of years at least, will have humans on board, should have humans on board, unless there is a major failure with Artemis I. But they will not land on the moon. They will orbit the moon, just like Artemis I is doing. And then Artemis III, which is I think it's scheduled for 2025 or 2026, something like that, will carry humans to the lunar landing. Now, by that time, it's expected that they will the Orion capsule will not go to the moon, rather not land on the moon, but rather dock at the Lunar Gateway station, which is not yet launched, and that the SpaceX Starship lunar vehicle will actually carry astronauts down to the surface of the moon. Now, we don't yet have an orbital Starship. We don't yet have a Starship that has 100% successfully landed itself. But, they still have a few years to get that in the can, as it were. So Starship will be involved in Artemis, but it will never replace the SLS because of the contracts involved. Artemis, the Artemis launch system is the SLS rocket and always will be. They can't change that at this point. It would need to be, they need to rewrite the whole script for the program, and that ain't gonna happen. So yes, it would be cheaper, but no, it's not gonna happen. Just like NASA is continuing to plan for crewed Boeing Starliner launches to the ISS, even though it's much more expensive than SpaceX's Crew Dragon launches because of the contracts. Also, to retain multiple options. for crew launch. If there's an issue with SpaceX, they can use Starliner. If there's an issue with Starliner, they can use SpaceX. But cost is not NASA's primary concern, as with most government things. Marina Repan says, I saw some video that SpaceX is working on a problem with Raptors for Starship, the one Soviet engineers could not solve when they worked on the N1 rocket. Now, I haven't seen that particular video, but I presume you're referring to the problem of having many, many engines, like more than 24 engines, on a booster. Because the Soviet N1 rocket had something like, I don't remember what it was, 30-something engines, 31 or 37 engines, and it was not a successful rocket. That was, of course, 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. But, yeah, I mean, the Falcon 9 has 9 engines, and that launches reliably all the time. But Super Heavy will have more. I don't remember what the current count is, 21 or 27 engines, but it's going to have a lot of engines, a lot of Raptor 2 engines. And as for what problems that poses for the vehicle, I don't have any personal knowledge of that. Again, I limit the amount that I focus on the day-to-day sort of play-by-play drama of SpaceX development, because there are lots of other channels that cover that. And I just don't have, like I said, I don't have the bandwidth myself to dive into all that. But I do hope that, very sincerely, that they overcome whatever challenges there are, because I'm big time rooting for Starship. It's such a revolutionary, has the potential to be such a revolutionary launch system that will carry us forward into a new era of spaceflight. All right. Marina Repan says, how do you assess the potential of Starship to become operational in today's situation? So kind of discussed that a minute ago. I believe that Starship will be successful. I hope that it will be successful. I think that it will be an incredibly capable vehicle if they're able to work through, some of the challenges that they have. But, again, it's up to the engineers and the clever folks at SpaceX to get that done. And I'm with them all the way. All right. A lot of discussion of NASA's budgeting, the space shuttle, SLS, risk management. Brandon Hoover says, why do they keep having valve problems on SLS and Orion? That's a good question. You'd think that a valve is something that should be pretty straightforward. There are zillions of valves in the world, and you'd think we'd have valves figured out by this point, but I couldn't answer that. I'm not an engineer nor a rocket surgeon. So, yeah, it's a good question. Now, some more cynical individuals might say that it is because this is all being built by the lowest bidder. But that's kind of a pat answer or a bit of a cheap answer. I mean, the actual reason why these valves are problematic, comes down to the engineering. I mean, they just need to be engineered correctly and then manufactured correctly, and then they'll be fine. But ULA doesn't seem to have a problem with its hydrogen fueling mechanisms on their Delta IV Heavy rockets. So maybe there should be a little more collaboration there, as suggested by Rockin' Robbins 13. And once again, hydrogen is a very small molecule, and so it likes to sneak its way through any crack or interface coupling. Okay, any more questions? Also, just a general request for the chat. Please keep things civil and not confrontational. It's good to discuss complex topics, but it's somewhat less than constructive to do so in a hostile, mocking, or trollish manner, so please don't do that. All right, so that looks like that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for coming. Until next time, and until the next live stream, keep it raw, and goodbye for now.